Hi everyone, welcome to DIY Ideas. So today I'm going to show you a really cool upcycling project. So we're using an old polo shirt and we're going to make a dress out of it. So I'll show you today what we're going to use, and we're not going to use that much. So as always, some fabric scissors, some pins, something to measure with. So here I have measuring tape and hand gauge, then some fabric chalk, an unstitcher so that we can unstitch the stitches we already have here and don't need, and then of course some thread in the matching color to your fabric. Last but not least, we need the polo shirt that you want to upcycle into a new dress. So in order to make this a little bit narrower, we need to unstitch the sleeves since it's going to be a lot easier that way. So we're going to unstitch this section and then the one underneath as well. And at the end, we're going to have a really nice seam there, so it's going to look nice and neat. So of course, you need to decide what kind of width you need here on top. You can of course keep it as it is, or you can do it more or less. So this is completely up to you. So here we would need to make it a little bit less, so it's going to be up to our shoulder, which means that we need to cut out a little bit of the fabric. But this you need to try on beforehand and just see where your sleeve starts, because it might be that your sleeve already starts exactly where it should, and then you just need to unstitch this and it'll be done. So now that I unstitched everything on both sides, we can get started with our sewing. So here you can see we have nice edges. I used an unstitcher because it's way neater that way. And now we need to see our shoulder width. So you can just try it on and see where it ends and then cut exactly where you want it to be. Then we're gonna do this waist section. So here you also need to try it on and just see how tight you want it or how much fabric you need to get rid of. So I'm gonna put a mark on here just to show you what that would look like. So that's what you need when you try it on. Be careful not to poke yourself. And then you just wanna mark how tightly you wanna have it. Make sure to leave 1 or 2 centimeters more just for the width of the stitches, but we're gonna make it narrower so that it has a really nice waist. So the width is completely up to you depending on what type of polo shirt you have, so the size of it and your own body shape. So make sure you measure it properly and then we can move on. So I wanted to show you how you can do this the best way possible, and what I do is turn it the inside out and then I try it on. I put the pins where I want them to be, so you see here on the mannequin what that would look like. Make sure you don't poke yourself, as I said, these are sharp. And yeah, apart from that, you are pretty much set to go. So we're working on it from inside out. That way the stitches are going to be neat in the end. So now what we want to do is make sure the lines are nice and straight. So I'm going to measure from both sides how much I have till the edge of the fabric. That way I know if I'm doing a symmetrical job, and it's going to look a lot neater in the end. Then we're going to pull a line or draw a line on here, and then we're going to have exactly the cut where we want it to be. Of course, we're going to use 1 centimeter more for stitches. So here you see the pins the way I want them to be and the way my body shape is. So I did it from top to bottom. And then on the bottom, I wanted to show you a really cool trick. So here you see that we have kind of an open end, and that's what I like as well. And I want to keep it that way too. So it's going to be really pretty in the end. I think it definitely has a nice effect to it. So we're going to make sure to keep that, but we're just going to make it a little bit narrower so that it fits properly. So yeah, you can see here we're going to start from the bottom or from the top and then move all the way back to the bottom, and then here we're going to stop where the mark is, and then we're going to deal with that in a second. So we're going to make the one side kind of open, so we're not going to do the stitch all the way. That's why you see on here that I put one regular pin and another pin basically kind of across to form a little mark. So now that we did a regular straight stitch on here, then we can continue with the rest of the steps. So now we can cut out the leftover fabric that we don't need on the left side of the stitch in this case. So just follow the stitch and make sure to not cut through the stitch itself, but just the fabric, and then we can move on. Also, don't forget to stop just a bit before our mark with the fabric, since then we're going to do here a little bit more of the fabric. You see that we kind of have this little corner here, so that's exactly the effect we want to mimic, and for that we need a bit more fabric than the rest of the stuff here, so that's why we're cutting a little bit before that, and then it should be good. And yeah, then when we're done with that, we're basically going to fold that inwards, do a stitch, and then we're going to get a really neat ending on the outside that looks exactly like the original polo shirt. So here we're going to cut from down to up, and then here we're also going to stay at the mark. You're going to see in a moment exactly what I mean. So we need 2 to 3 centimeters there, and for the rest of this 1 centimeter is enough. So you see here I did an extra seaming stitch, so you can do a zigzag stitch here, or you can do the seaming stitch if your machine has it. So that's completely up to you, just to make sure everything stays in place. Here on the bottom you see, as I said, a little bit more of the fabric, which is exactly what we want. So we're going to take the pin out now, we don't need it anymore, and then what we're going to do is fold this inwards, and then we're going to do a stitch right there. So you can see here I'm basically mimicking what we had, but with a little bit less width. And I'm going to use the same pin again to keep that flap in place, and then the same thing on the back. Okay, now we can get to the stitching and then move on. Also, I recommend doing just 1 stitch, so what you can basically do is just go kind of straight and then move your needle or move your direction and finish it off on top as well. So in the end you're going to be able to see that little stitch, and I think that looks really nice. It looks like the original polo shirt does, so that's what I want to mimic, and that's why I'm putting a pin on top to not forget to just basically do 1 stitch for both the front and the back. So let me find the old piece. So the section that I cut out here, you can kind of see that we have the 1 stitch that kind of goes from the one side to the other and forms like a rectangle without the one last side. So now that we did this on both sides, this is what you're gonna have, and the one side is gonna be a little bit shorter than the other. That's exactly what we want, since the back is gonna be a little bit longer. And you see here the stitch looks really neat from the inside as well, so it's gonna look really fine from the outside. You'll see when we turn it inside out. Also, another really cool trick that I have, and that is not just for this section but for the entire dress here is that you pull the fabric a little bit, so stretch it out just a little bit when you do the stitches. It's going to be really nice in the end, and you're not going to have too little thread, so it's not going to rip when you wear it, since you need it to be a little bit stretchier for putting it on and taking it off. And then you want to try this on and just check if the waist is nice, if you like the way it looks. If you need to shorten it a little bit more, then you can do that. At this moment, it's much easier than later. So just make sure that you're satisfied with the narrowest part of it where your waist is going to be. So after you've tried it on and you're satisfied with the way it looks, or you corrected what you needed to, then we can get to the sleeves here. So you see here I unstitched them, and now what I did is basically pin this all together to keep it in place. So I kind of folded it just a little bit inwards because I want a nice seam on there, and you can see here, let me show you from the inside. So this is why I folded it inwards a little bit, and I'll show you on the mannequin itself. I basically wanted it to have to have it stop exactly where my shoulder is, so that's what we're doing as well. You can of course do it even narrower or a little bit more wide if you prefer that, but I think this looks really nice. So you see here the stitch on top we're gonna keep, so we're not gonna do anything with that, which is really cool, and it's gonna make our project faster. So yeah, now we have these pins here, which means we're missing some stitches on here. And also an optional step is to do a little band on here. That way you're going to have a nice decorative piece, and it's going to be a little bit more of the sleeve there. So if you prefer something like that, now would be the time to pin it up here and put it all in place before you do the stitches themselves. So you see here I folded it inwards. As I said, you can of course do it twice if you want to. This depends on the type of fabric your polo shirt is made out of, but for most polo shirts, just one fold will be just fine. And then here on the bottom section, you just need to make sure that you're really careful so that it doesn't look weird later or has a little bulge or something like that going on. So it should be pretty good to go as long as you're careful with it. So yeah, now what I'm going to do is do that stitch from top to bottom, and I'll be back. So now that we did both of these, you can see how nice they look and how neat they are, and it's exactly what I wanted. So yeah, we're basically removing the sleeves and making a sleeveless dress, and you can see from the inside as well, I'm going to show you that the stitches look really neat there as well, so they're not going to bother you when you wear them, when you wear the dress. So an optional step that you can do is just make this section a little bit narrower, so that way you're not going to have this kind of sticking out later when you finish your project. So make sure to try it on and see if that happens. If yes, it's really easy to fix, and if not, then even better. So I'm going to show you how you can do that in case you do end up wanting to correct it. So I'm putting a pin on here. You would put it on when you try it on, and then we're going to do a little stitch right there to kind of remove the excess fabric that we don't really need on here. So just a little stitch here is going to make everything a lot better if that happens. Also make sure to keep everything straight, and that way prevent anything weird from going on with the stitches. So what you can also optionally do is basically a stitch on here as well. So that way you have an extra decorative stitch on top. But what I'm going to do next is this little section right here on the bottom, and when we do that, we'll be pretty much done with our dress. So here is our finished dress. So I'm just going to show you a really quick recap. So this section we fixed a little bit. That's basically here underneath your arm or armpit, and then apart from that, you can see here by the way we did the stitch that we have a really nice waist as well that's going to accentuate your hips. And a cool trick is to go from the inside and just kind of iron over the section that has the leftover fabric on the outside of the stitch, just to make sure everything is on the right side and doesn't form any bulges or anything weird when you wear it. So you would basically just unflap both sections. The left goes to the left, the right goes to the right, and then it'll be done. Here on the bottom, you can of course do an extra band. You can do a complete additional skirt if you want on the bottom, depending on the length of your polo shirt or dress in this case. Now that we're done, and this is it for today. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Feel free to shoot a thumbs up, to subscribe, and to share. So see you in our next video. Bye!